Hey everyone, welcome to the Real Talk, where we deep dive into conversations without any filter. Today we have a guest with remarkable corporate career spanning over last 25 years. His name is Guru. A quick introduction about him. He started his career with an international bank. Then he moved to a large American conglomerate where he trained across various verticals, including M&A, finance, strategy, pricing, treasury, and then gradually grew to the ranks of strategy director. He now holds a leadership position in financial services company in UK. Thank you, Guru, for joining us.
Thank you.
In addition to his corporate career, he is also an avid reader and he has deep interest in diverse subjects, and this gives an opportunity for us to explore a lot of topics. Also, personally, both of us follow your LinkedIn writings, and those are very thoughtful, thought-provoking, and full of wisdom. If you guys are not already following him, we encourage you to do so. Why don't you start by introducing yourself and talk about how your career has unfolded, and looking back 25 years, did you think it would turn out this way?
No, honestly. So let me take a step back. Thank you for a very kind introduction. Taking a step back, I grew up in India, and I never expected that I will be traveling outside of India. I did my engineering and then moved to US, and I did work in US, UK, Japan, China, Singapore. So it's been fulfilling, fascinating. I never thought I will be in all of these countries, never thought I will be in finance, never thought I will be working for GE or any other big conglomerates. So it's been fantastic. No regrets, and absolutely loved the journey and looking forward to the next part.
So, how is your approach to life has changed from your 20s to 30s to now you're in 40s? Has anything changed?
As you worked, across various countries and with various kind of people, has this affected to approach to life has also changed?
It has to change, and it has changed, and it will change. Life is like a river, so it will flow through the bends, depends on the terrain. So even before the 20s, let me start with my school. I was extremely shy and I wasn't outgoing in my school. But there was one instance where it was an impromptu, someone had to compare an event, but they had a sore throat and they had to be out of the event. And unexpectedly, without preparation, I ended up in front of the school assembly. And that was a turning point, because then it gave me a confidence that I could be extrovert. That's not my actual mode, but I could speak in public, I could take on. So that's my initial part, which came out of the shell, I would say. And out of school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But in your early 10 to 20, you are largely influenced by peers, your friend circles, your neighbors. And if you're coming from a middle class background, you also want to work where there you can earn money. So if you look at most of us, the 2 generations ago, most of them did not have any government job. They were trying to do whatever it is. My grandfather's generation, he was an exception where he worked in railways. But our parents' generation, they all focused on security of job and putting food on the table. So they were all employed in government organization or banks where cash flow has to be certainty, because the focus was on feeding to the family. Into the first generation, in my generation, is when you started working in private firms. That was never a concept. So I was influenced by my peers. Most of them were doing engineering, and I wanted to do engineering. I wanted to stay true to engineering. So that was my 10 to 20. I wanted to land where everyone was going. So that's how I landed in engineering. And I wanted to stay in engineering, but I did have a diverse set of friends who exposed me to finance career or MBA or whatever. I had no idea about it. So 10 to 20, you have very little direction, but typically you do what your peers and what your siblings or your cousins do. That's 10 to 20. 20 to 30 was the turning point in my life, and I think it should be for everyone. That is 20 to 30 is when you can take maximum risk, because there is nothing there, you don't need a safety net, you have to fail fast. Experience in life is you need to get accelerated experience in so many different fields so that you don't feel the regret of I should have tried this, I should have tried that. So for me, 20 to 30, and I must thank my mom there because I landed in a very good role in a Citibank, and I could have lived my life very comfortably working in a tech job in India, working in Citibank, but she encouraged me, allowed me to take a risk, and I resigned from a well-paying Citibank and moved to US in 2000, 2001 when the dot-com bust was happening. So that was a turning point because I was able to take risk. Things didn't go according to the plan. That taught me a lot. I joined a startup and the dot-com bust happened, and I wanted to earn money and join an MBA, but the time passed, didn't have the money, but I joined an MBA, gave me scholarship. So 20 to 30, then I joined a big American conglomerate which allowed me to travel variety of countries. So 20 to 30, you have to take risk, and you should accelerate and get as much experience as you can. So that was my 20 to 30, extremely happy about what I did. Typically, what I have seen with my friends as well as my peers is 30 to 40 is going to be the toughest time in anybody's career, because you're at that time married, you have kids, you're trying to figure out how do you financially secure, but at the same time, that is when the rat race is at the peak, where you are always looking over a shoulder, like, what is that person's title, how much money they are making, what is this person's title. The unhappiest time happens to be the 30 to 40, and that you will try to balance out your wealth, your identity, your corporate ladder, raising a kid, buying a house. That's what happens in 30 to 40. 40 is generalization, is when you start to get your foothold, and you kind of see a certain direction. By the time you have invested in real estate, you are in a stable corporate job, but you are still in the race on why haven't reached the ceiling of the title that I needed to reach. So by the time you're 40, 41, you will see like, oh, all the folks have reached that title. It doesn't matter what money you are earning at that time, that focus early 40s. But once you listen to variety of people, read books, then you realize, and you slowly mature in your 40s. I'm still not 50. I'm a couple of years away from turning 50. But 50s, I would think, is when you will establish your identity outside of work. So it is very, very important in 40s not to associate yourself with your corporate title or the firm that you work for, because 50s, that is not guaranteed, and you have to form your own view and your own identity. It's a long answer, but that's the foundation.
Great. So, what according to you is the biggest leveler in life?
Health, and your health of someone, your parents or your close relatives, because Viktor Frankl was a proponent of tragic optimism. The reality of it is, if you take a step back, the life expectancy the previous generation was 40, 50, but ours maybe 70, 80. But with the amount of vigor we wanted to grow, accumulate property, wealth, but the reality of it is everyone is going to be gone um, when the time comes. And in the pursuit of chasing more and more, people are forgetting to live the life, and we have seen, especially in our generation, quite a few people passing, unfortunately losing their life very early, either because of heart attacks or whatever it is. Greatest leveler in life is health. If you go elsewhere in our parent generation or whatever, the fact that they moved around, they were happy with whatever it is, it was, they led a much more content life. Health is the biggest leveler for this generation. I have had, I am in my 40s, as I said. I know so many examples of highly accomplished people who were focused on career, running at the highest speed, but within 5 to 6 months, when the health event happens, it just comes down, quite collapsed. And there are a lot of regrets that why didn't I spend the money and enjoy my life, and why did I wait for something else? So that's the biggest leveler in my view.
Have you received a piece of wisdom from someone elderly who has lived their life? And if yes, what is the most profound piece of wisdom you have received?
Look, several things. One thing I would repeatedly go back is Charlie Munger, who keeps saying, like, learn from the dead. There are many more dead people than people who are alive. It's 14:1 ratio. So learn from the dead people, read what they have written, and read the books that have survived for years. So there are many that I have learned. One thing that I would say is very simple advice, but very profound, I would say, is, I'll quote from many sources, and I don't want to take each name. One, you got to have a physical mobility when you grow older. You need to be physically independent. You need to be financially independent. And as you age, you have to eat less and avoid toxic confrontation or people who are like keeping up with the Jones and whatnot. So that's key. Now, the sooner we become health conscious, where we can stretch our physical, you can't catch up when you are in 60s or 70s. So it needs to be a compound interest, where we need to keep our physical mobility going right from our 30, 40s, because you cannot magically become physically mobile when you get to 60 or 70. So that's one. Financially independent is the second one, which, there are very many books. I can recollect when I was growing up, raised by a single mom, 3 kids, lived in a flat which was 300 square feet, and had absolutely fantastic time. No regrets in my childhood, the happiest childhood I've had. So that gives me, when I look back, that is my barometer. So you don't need much to be happy. So once you have set up the baseline, then it's a question of maintaining your lifestyle. Do not inflate your lifestyle just because that is what is expected. That's, once you don't inflate the lifestyle, but don't forget to live your life. There is no point in earning money but not enjoying it. But you ought to enjoy what you truly enjoy, but not what the world tells you that you ought to enjoy. That becomes a very key notion of it. Once you don't inflate the lifestyle, and you are judicious in your finance, you will become financially independent. Then eating less is about reducing your temptations. And if you do all of those things, like, look, I mean, don't try to don't try to argue with idiots. There is no gold medal for proving the point. If you disagree with it, don't be emotional about it. You just carry on. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. So As long as they are not a missionary trying to enforce their opinion on yours, let them be happy in their lane and never try to enforce your view of life on them, then world is very peaceful. So those are the things that I would say, simple but key things to carry on. And I'm not there yet, so it's always a lifelong journey.
Yeah. So, as you've talked about that, how your perspective has changed, over the years. As of today, what is your current approach to life? And what are your top mantras or, the core principles that shapes the way you live your life?
It needs a thought, but I'll go with the flow and then tell me what comes top of my mind. The first thing is, I've written about this as well. If you look at the entire universe, every single particle in the universe has its own identity. Every human being's DNA is different. A strand of hair is enough to say that you are different from someone else. Every star is different. There is no identical thing. So never compete, never compare. Focus on being the best version of yourself. Nobody can compete being you. So that is my number one mantra. So not too fussed about what others are doing, etc., etc. So that's number one mantra. The number two mantra that I would want to follow is try to become financially independent. Because once you become financially independent, you can do what you want and not necessarily do what others want you to do to earn your living. So that is number two. And number three is find something that excites you outside of your work. Because work will be dictated unless you're running your own business. Every day is going to be different. And a lot of times you have to work according to the rules of the road, whichever corporate environment you are in, you have to play according to that. So you have to find an outlet for releasing your energy or frustration, so to speak. Once you find an outlet, it becomes a lot easier to work in an environment which is not necessarily that you might be doing a work which you may not truly enjoy, but reality of it is you're compensated. It's called compensation because you're compensated for doing something that you may not want to do. That is why it's called compensation. So you have to find something that releases your frustration, and that also kind of creates an identity outside of your corporate title, outside of your corporate ladder. I think those are the three things that comes top of my mind, but I've written a lot in my blog. So
Great. As a segue to it, there's a lot of discussion around success. What's your definition of success, and has it changed over the years?
look, success is relative and everyone has to define their own success. The beauty of success is you mark your own homework and you are successful when you put the check mark on yes, I am successful. Question is, has it changed? Yes, it's profoundly changed. It's changed all the time on what success is. Early in my career, it was title, it was getting experience, working in different countries, traveling. All of those things are what makes successful. Increasingly, success is very simple for me. Success is, can I do what I want to do? Can I spend the time the way I want to spend the time? And can I build a very close circle of friends with whom I can be unfiltered and I can be myself? So once you're with friends and family where you can be unfiltered and you can spend the time without any demands the way you want to spend, and you're just being yourself, I think that's success. Because once you've gained the financial security, then you can use your money to buy your time. In initial part of life, we are spending our time to buy money. Later part of life, you're going to spend money to buy time. So you ought to have enough money so that you can spend the time the way you want it. And that is success. That's pretty much it.
It again nicely segue into the next question. Since you spoke about time, I think it's quite obvious time is finite, but why do still humans prioritize accumulating wealth over time?
Listen, would not, I'll be lying to say that you don't have to focus on accumulating, because end of the day, you cannot have these podcasts or philosophical discussion unless you can put food on the table. So your ability to secure enough financials so that you don't have to worry about putting food on the table, take care of emergencies for health, that is absolutely important. Once you have achieved the financial independence, then it becomes the game of, can you call it done? And that is where it becomes harder and harder. What I mean by that is there are some people who are built that way, and it is statistically proven that in US or UK, I don't know the term, the exact benchmark in UAE or India, but you can say that they say after $100,000 per annum, the marginal improvement for your happiness doesn't increase. So your happiness does not grow as you make more money, and it's kind of a paradoxically, if you have too much of money, you are focused on safeguarding that money, and there is a risk factor comes with associating with your family, that they don't have to kidnap your family, etc. So but some people are built on accumulating as much as they can because they are just wired to be one better than the others. And also, the successful economic model has been capitalism. Capitalism thrives on people making as much as possible, and that is what is rewarded. So if you are in US, US is where it is because of capitalism, because there is no limit, and people just love making as much money as possible, and they're unabashed about it, and that is why you see US leading. So you have to draw your own line on where it is, but because of some people wired differently, everyone else is benefiting.
We have got really good insights from you. We both know that you are an avid book reader. Do you remember when did you pick this habit of reading books? And if you have to recommend some books for kids, teenager, and professional/adults, what would be those books?
I picked up reading books actually very late in my life, in my 20s. In my 10 to 20, I was a classic Indian kid reading Amar Chitrakatha or comics, etc. So never really delved into serious books. In my 20s, once I stepped out of India, is when I had a lot of time. I picked up a lot of books. Look, there's a lot of books that has had profound impact on me, and as Naval Ravikant also says, like, read the books that has survived for a long time, because it's not a fad. So one thing that I keep going back and reading is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It's nothing to do with motorcycle. If you get through the first 100 pages, it's a really, really good book where it goes deeper and deeper. It's about a genius. He wrote only 2 books, and I love both the books. He was an accomplished Olympiad, and he was academically gifted. But in his quest for perfection, he became mad, and he was admitted into a mental asylum. Then he recovered and he came back. And this art of motorcycle maintenance is, he goes with his kid on a road trip, but also it's kind of a challenge wherein he is going deeper and deeper, talking to himself, and also telling to his about his road trip, where he goes to the extent of just tipping over the edge between sanity and insanity, but he's pulling back. So it's an amazing book, which I really enjoyed, and I keep going back because it's a very deep book. You have to cross the first 100 pages, and then it goes with the flow. And I read anything Charlie Munger. I mean, he's a wise old owl who's been through life, amazing stuff. And then he just passed away last year at the age of 99.
Yeah, yeah.
So anything, Charlie Munger, Almanac, anything about Charlie Munger, I don't miss a beat. I read those. So I have no inhibition. I'll buy a lot of books. I don't force myself to finish it because you never know what you're going to pick up. And typically in a book, there will be one paragraph which might change your perspective about life totally. Anything Charlie Munger, amazing, I would do. For teenagers and especially younger people, one thing is key is they read Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I've been following his writing for a long time because our education system has not evolved. When I graduated from electrical engineering and I got a job, and a long time ago I was paid a lot of money as my first salary. I never saw, my mom had a 20-30 years of work experience, but my pay was 2-3 times than what she was getting. But nobody ever taught me what to do with the money in education. Education is quite pathetic. You train to put in employment, but nobody has any clue of what to do with money. So Psychology of Money you ought to study when you are very, very young, because even little that you save, the compounding effect is going to give you financial security much faster. So that's what I would say. Between Charlie Munger, Zen and Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, Psychology of Money, I'll keep the book short, but I'll give you in the notes a longer list. I would say those three should suffice, because Charlie Munger covers everything about life and it's amazing.
What role does travel play in shaping someone's experience and outlook?
Very, very big role. Let me tell you from an Indian perspective, because I was raised in Bangalore and Madras, as it was called then. So what we think about the world, as they call it as frog in the well, is a really true. Because your perception of what the world is and what life is based on where you grew up. So in the olden generations, people just used to ask, where are you from? Because that very quickly figured out and gave them a benchmark of what kind of person you will be. And most of the time it's 80% correct, because you've grown up in a very traditional middle class in southern India or northern India, then you will know what kind of careers you will go, what kind of food you will have, what kind of mindset you will have, and what kind of preconceived notions you will have. So it's a very limiting factor if you have never traveled. So when I landed in US, I had a preconceived notion, but it was all completely shattered. Grew up in a generation in India where humility was valued. Confidence was, I know everything, so I am confident. And I landed in US, worked for a couple of years and joined an MBA. It was completely upside down. Confidence was, I don't know, so what, I'll figure it out. It's exactly opposite to the Indian upbringing. And they didn't let humility limit your aspirations. So sometimes humility can limit your aspirations. Landing in US taught you should not limit yourself. You should just go for the maximum limit. In India we'll say don't be too greedy, don't be too, no. It is absolutely go for the stars in US. So that opened up my horizon in terms of risk taking, in terms of confidence level, that instilled a confidence that you can do anything you want, and the education system is wired that way. And I worked for GE, one of the amazing firms. So that US, I learned a lot. After US, then they sent me to Belgium. I landed in Brussels very, very early in my career. So every weekend I was traveling. I was newly married. Me and my wife were just take one backpack, travel every country, like couple of hours, go to Germany, go to Italy, go to Switzerland. So we traveled a lot. Just the variety of people, cuisine, culture, philosophies, outstanding exposure. In US, they built everything within 200 years. So the old buildings are probably, 200 years old, and, it's a newly independent country. But in Europe, just like India, everything is old. I mean, I am just amazed, and still, I went for the second time again, like absolutely stunned and bewitched by the beauty of Rome. And, it just like wherever I look, it was just amazing how they have preserved their history, their culture, and started getting into reading about, Socrates and Plato in Greece. After Rome, I went to Greece, and absolutely stunning in terms of Greece and Italy and Florence, and started reading about Leonardo da Vinci, and it's absolutely stunning. And then went to Paris. So the 6 months in Brussels opened up a huge world of what I would call as European culture heritage. Until then, I was oblivious about it, and it opened up my reading opportunity. I would have never picked up Socrates or Plato or Aristotle. All of these things just bumped into it. And same thing, when I landed in Germany, just stunned by the beauty of Germany. Not many people, everyone talks about just the manufacturing element of it. And then I started studying about World War II and the history there. So travel opened up, and then when I went back to US, then I worked in Singapore. It's an introduction for the Western people into Asia. Everything just works. From absolutely nothing, Singapore has been very successful model in Asia, and everyone is trying to compete with it. Then I landed in China. I mean, talk about, even when I was doing my MBA, I spent about 3 to 4 weeks in China. But then when I worked in China, that democracy has its pitfalls, and so no system is perfect. But having an autocratic system that just works means you can just have extraordinary development in a very, 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 very short form of time. So it's a controlled capitalism magic. It has worked, right? It's just amazing. I could see like buildings sprouting, and China is just leapfrog. So that was an amazing experience. Then interestingly, I had a very difficult, I mean, Tokyo as a tourist was extraordinarily, fruitful for me. I enjoyed Tokyo and Japan. Professionally, it was the hardest working environment for me in Tokyo. Japan has a different model. It works, but how it works, you're not going to learn in 6 months. And I spent only 6 months in Japan. So to learn the Japanese culture, you need a longer time. But they have a unique culture, and 6 months was too short for me to learn, and that is why it was professionally difficult, because most of the other countries have like more or less gone on to the American culture, but Japan was so different.
Can you give some instances like how it is different from American culture, and like what were some of the problems probably you have faced there when you were?
So, Japan, it might have changed now. So, I was in Japan in 2007, 2008. And also, I must add a context that I was working for GE real estate business when the entire real estate market was collapsing. So, economic environment was also very, very difficult. And I worked in the GE division, real estate division there, and auditing the real estate revenue booking. So I must give the backdrop before I can give this. So one, at that point in time, Japan is very hierarchical. So very, very respectful for seniority. And the work hours were long. Everyone used to work very, very long hours. Second, language barrier. Although the senior management spoke English, but anyone below senior management, it's all in Japanese. So I had a professional translator who will translate the contracts of the real estate documents, and I will type it in English and then audit based on that. And the meetings used to be, if you're not speaking to the CFO or the CEO, it used to be you asking question in English and the translator translating and then saying. So it's a hierarchical culture, and I could never figure out whether they agreed with me or not, because anything you say yes doesn't mean that they agreed with you. Yes means they heard you, and I could not pick up all of those nuances in Japan early. So but the system works, and they're diligent, they work, they make things work, highly progressive in terms of electronics. And I've seen the vending machine where the beer kind of comes out of the vending machine, and it also hydraulically tips so that the froth is just adjusted so it stays on the top. So it's a kaleidoscope of different things. I'm sure people feel about India that way, and that's at the work environment. And then you go, weekends, you see the youngsters absolutely dressed in a very funky costumes, having their own. So too short a time, and I was also I was in the rat race, focused on the rat race. So it's a combination of factors, but I enjoyed the the completely different experience coming from different angle. But professionally, I would have loved to have worked at least a couple of years in Japan. So that was a totally different environment in Japan. And then I landed in UK. UK, part familiar, part unfamiliar. And I used to joke, I used to work in GE, and then when GE decided to sell, my wife didn't want to move back to US. So we were looking for job roles in UK. So I did not expect to land in any financial services, because they had a laundry list of, have you done this certificate, that certificate, have you done this? Because I'm not a chartered accountant, I have an engineering and MBA, very different one. So they go through a checklist of stuff, and then I used to joke with people like, nobody asked me whether I can do my job. They were just going through whether you have a certification, etc. And that is where the UK, you got to land. And fortunately, someone interviewed me who had an American work experience, and they wanted to introduce a different culture. Otherwise, I would never make it in finance and banking in UK. So it's a completely different culture, where very meticulous about doing certain things in an orderly way. But there are systems that works for UK, because UK has been there for a long time. The banks are all 400, 500 years old banks. So every culture has different. So you have to spend time to understand the culture. And I would add one more stuff, which my son is now going to be, he's born in US, but being schooling in UK. So I always say that you got to get experience of both US, UK, and also growth economies or growing places like India and UAE, UK universities historically, and I've not been, so take it with a grain of salt. The Oxfords, the Cambridge, they're all 1,000+ years old. And the notion of the education there came, if you think about it, it was all aristocrats, and they had made enough money. They don't have to worry about money. So the pursuit of education in Oxford, Cambridge was to challenge them intellectually. So that is how the intellectual challenge is what the British universities gives. It's a fantastic one, and I can see from my son's education how they think and they shape. And if you think about, Newtons of the worlds and whatnot, they had Darwin, Newton. They were financially secure, and it was for intellectual pursuit. American universities, very recent, they're focused on making money because America is a new country, and that is why you will find a lot of startups coming from American universities, but not as many startups from British universities, because there is still intellectual debating, there is still, there is a limiting belief, and there is risk taking is tempered in UK. So it's quite a fascinating one. No system is perfect, but traveling across different countries, I've seen these things. It's a long-winded answer, but that's been my experience.
Look, I was about to ask, obviously you have traveled widely and you've also worked, but if you have to pick one country out of everywhere you worked, which one was the most exciting and fulfilling?
I will tell you, I mean, it depends on the context, the time of your career. The best place I've really enjoyed working is San Francisco Bay Area. Having said that, it's been 20 plus years since I have worked in Bay Area. It's combination of reasons. It's just a magnet for attracting talent. So you will find it's a magnet for everything. Capital flows comes there. Talent is there. And amazing type of landscape as well. So you have 3 hours travel, you will be in desert. 2 hours you'll be up in the mountain in Lake Tahoe skiing your way to glory. And in San Francisco Bay Area, there's a lot of mountains. You can get all kinds of stuff within 2 to 3 hours of journey. Intellectual challenge, capital flow, the talent flow. That's by far the most exciting and the best place I worked, but I was very, very early in my career. The world has changed a lot, and I don't know what San Francisco is now, so you got to take it with a pinch of salt, because now it doesn't matter where you are. Capital, if you're smart enough, you will attract capital. So that's my best place. But as you go through your life, you will be part of a sandwich generation. What I mean by sandwich generation is you will be in one place. Your children might aspire to work and study in a different place, different part of the world, and your parents will be in a different part of the globe. So what is the best place cannot be your own selfish version of where you get your intellectual high or where you make the money. So your priorities change of where you want to work as you age, and your 40s and 50s, you're a sandwich between your younger generation and the older generation. So you have to make some pragmatic choices on where it works, and everyone's life is going to be different, is what I would say.
As you said that you want your son to experience both US and UK culture. If you have to pick one, what is the culture which you like the most?
I wouldn't say like the most. As I say, there is an experience and an age for everything. So I would say you got to go where there is talent, where there is risk taking, and where there is growth. in the last 20 years and even now, US is the only place, as you can see with market cap, the innovation and the companies coming. So there used to be a phrase called "Go West, young man," even in US. So you have to take risk very early in your life. So you got to go where there is growth, innovation is coming. So far, it is still in US. How far it will last, I cannot tell. So what I have encouraged him, which whether he will follow it or not, I'm not sure, is you got to take risks. It doesn't matter. The risk innovation is still in US, so you start from there. If it moves to UAE or it moves to Singapore, you got to move there. Because very early in your career, you got to take risk and you got to try so many different things in the first 10 years. I was lucky to try software coding, then MBA, then went into operations, then I did supply chain. G gave me variety of experience before I landed in finance. So you have to go where you have to be young, take risks. The middle, consolidate, where you can build, because relationship becomes very important. So who you marry is probably the most important decision, because the values will have to align. If the values don't align, it doesn't matter what you accomplish. So you're 30 to 40, you have to align values with your spouse. So it has to be a joint decision. 40s to 50s, you are going to be evaluating, where you really want to position yourself. And then, so it depends on the age. There is no one magic mantra that you got to experience this culture or that culture. But, I've landed, extreme West, and I've landed in UK. But, it will change with the time.
Okay, so moving on, I think let's discuss something around corporate career. What advice would you give for people in their 20s?
For 20s, let me start, because you are going to come for the first time into a real world. What I mean by that is what you read and what you're taught in your textbook is, morality, equality, egalitarian, etc. So you assume the world works exactly the way it is written in textbooks. So the first thing you ought to do, if possible even before you graduate, is try to learn about how humans operate. That is very key, because it's never taught in school, because your career is going to dependent on that. So that's your first piece. Try to learn from not textbooks, from people who are dead, about how human beings work, by reading primarily biographies, autobiographies, a lot. As many biographies and autobiographies you can read while you are in college, you should do so. And once you come into the real world, 20 to 30 has to be accelerated experience and learning. You have to work in different industries, different countries. Try to join a rotation program or a leadership program, or if possible, try to change jobs. And it might appear to be very counterintuitive. Change jobs every 18 months. In fact, if possible, every 6 to 8 months, change your location, change the type of job that you do, and you have to work for a different boss if you can. Because then it gives you a very accelerated learning of what you can learn from a very good boss. You can learn from a very poor boss a lot more than a good boss. And you will learn to work with the teammates. So that's when the incentives, how you are incentivizing people working in the team, you will do. So all of these things you need to do as much as you can very early in your life. Because that's rotational programs, whatever firm it is. Even if you're not in rotational program, quit after 1 year. Try different things. Work in different country. Try different things so that you build a toolkit of experiences. What will make you successful in life is not your technical ability, but how you anticipate the human behavior on the other side of the table is going to be, because that's the key. Because beyond a certain point in your career, you are going to be only managing human beings. It's about managing people. Once you get into a management layer, it's about managing people. And I've written about this recently as well, because your intelligent is how you catch a snake. A snake arrives in your drawing room, but the experience is what you actually do when a live snake is thrown into your living room. So that's a totally different one. You got to experience yourself ups and downs. That's 20 to 30. You got to nail it.
No, you talked about promotions. From your extensive experience, what do you think that how are the increments, career progression, rewards, bonuses are truly decided in a corporate environment? And a follow-up on that is it based on a merit? Is it based on perception? Or is it based on organization's dynamics?
There's no perfect answer, but you have to be able to read organization perfectly. So what I mean by that is, there are times there is a tide. When the economy is growing, the company is growing, you really don't have to do anything. You will just rise with the tide. I know, not that people working in NVIDIA are any more intelligent now than they were 5 years ago. But it's just the nature of the flow of the water, and a higher tide means for the same intellect level, almost everyone is a millionaire, and there are people who are worth 100 million or so. So there is one, if you can be smart enough to spot a tide and you can ride the wave, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to manage any of those things, etc. But that the onus is on you on that one. If the economy is shrinking, the company is shrinking, it really doesn't matter, how good you are able to read their fellow human beings, how intelligent you are, how creative you are. None of it matters, because in a shrinking environment, everybody is looking for protecting their own territory and their own jobs. As they say in the airplane, the first thing you need to do is wear your oxygen mask first, even before putting it onto your child. And that is how the human beings work. So in that time, if you go and speak in terms of meritocracy, I have done this, I'm intelligent, none of it matters. You can say that, you said it is a meritocracy is there, whatever. No, it's not there. So it is the ability sometimes able to navigate where the action is and where important people see you. It needs to be 2 levels up, and they need to see you. The timing has to work, and you need to be patient. And a lot of times what happens is, if you don't play the long game, then you will lose out.
I think just to pick on that, you need to connect with people who are 2 level up. I think one of the challenges I see, and I do mentor a lot of people, is they never get access beyond their immediate boss for whatever reasons. And then the challenge they also face is there is a kind of a narrative which is created by their immediate bosses, and they're not able to kind of communicate what they want to communicate and also talk about their aspirations and things with their boss's boss. How do you break into that?
This used to be a old world problem, not the new world problem. So let me explain or expand on this one. What I mean by that is, in the old world, everything was within the 4 walls. When they have a talent discussion, etc., 2 levels, 3 levels up, whatever, the perception is what gets spoken in that 4 walls. Now there's no problem. You guys are a classic example. If you're producing, there is an internet where the wall has come down, because most of the people who have not kept up, the old world bosses or managers, you can publish as a free world. It's just not your boss. Your boss, your boss's boss, the prime ministers, the presidents, the entire world. There is what is preventing you from expressing yourself in the internet, whether it is TikTok, whether it's YouTube, whether it is writing,
Or
whether
it's
it
a real
is
talk
Real talk
podcast.
yeah.
yeah, or podcasting, right? So once you do that, it is not going to be easy for the old world bosses to paint a picture that they want to paint. Now, but you also have to make sure that you're dealing with human beings inside the offices. So, first of all, you need to be unafraid to experiment. You should be okay to take the downside if it's a very small environment or whatever it is. As most of the firms actually don't mind, as long as you don't talk about the businesses, as long as you don't cross the line, it is your intellectual pursuit that you're publishing. In fact, the firms benefit from having an employees who have externally become where the external world recognizes them as leaders and they follow. So it is an intangible benefit that the organizations are getting. So you don't take things personally as this person is blocking, that person is blocking. It is upon yourself to express yourself, and then you play the long game. If it doesn't work, as I would say, you are not a tree. You can move. So staying in one place and getting frustrated that I'm not getting, is not an option. So you cannot worry about things that you cannot control. You cannot control what person X is going to tell to their boss about you. You cannot control about what people say is your strengths and your weaknesses and whatnot. When you go for a feedback session, pay close attention, take the feedback which is true, where you can improve upon, and you should have the intellect to isolate what is politics, convenient feedback was what is real feedback. So do not wait. In my professional experience, the real feedback comes from impromptu questions when you're walking from the meeting, or when you catch up in the elevator, or where you ask the bosses without script, hey, tell me what do you think I should do. Then you get the real feedback. If you wait for your annual appraisal and what is written, you're going to get a very scripted one. So
I think a lot of times I think feedback is to fit an outcome what has been pre-decided.
Pre-decided, correct.
So you have to take stuff. You are not a tree. You can move. Be unafraid to express yourself and create a value. And then people once they start asking like, why is X not already certain corporate title, then it's already done. If you go and say, why I need this title, why am I not this title, don't make me like, unless you ask that you want to be promoted, nobody's going to promote you. But if you anchor only on the title, it's much harder. But if people already think you are already that, then it becomes a lot easier.
Out of curiosity, as you have trained across various verticals, what do you think about, there is the norm in consulting industry that to specialize in one particular vertical or one,
Domain.
function, and how do you see that, the difference in value when it comes to training across various vertical or working under one function to grow your career?
Listen, I think it's all made up, there's a lot of things that are made up. So let me tell you. So unless you are a cardiac surgeon performing a heart surgery, everything else is made up, right? So you ought to know, something. All of the problem needs to be either solved by humans or machines. It's pretty much what it is. So these are artificial ones. So I will again lean back on my GE career, which was exceptionally good in these things. Is they had a separate program called corporate audit staff, where there was no requirement on your educational background. And in the corporate audit staff, it was at that time when I was working there, I loved it because it was 400 I think it used to be 300 people, but you need to travel all the time, etc. So they used to get people from diverse backgrounds. So I have worked with someone who's a PhD in material science, working in GE Global Research, someone who's PhD in aeronautical engineering, designing aircraft engines, and someone who's done English literature, no background about finance or technology or anything like that. And then they tell like, look, this is the problem, you go figure it out. And the people who are aeronautical engineers, who's got PhD and 10 years they worked in research in aeronautical engineering, have audited financial statement of NBC Universal Studio, and they've audited commercial, and they've set up a commercial contract for oil and gas, and they've become CFOs, and they've been very, very successful. So what I mean to say is you can figure it out. World is changing so fast. If you're saying like I need to have a deep domain expertise in certain area, only then I can do something, you will never innovate anything in life or in your firm. So consulting, financial services, everything can be learned, but you need to put in hours and you need to have intellectual curiosity. Very super specialized jobs like a heart surgeon or something very, very specialized, I wouldn't bet on it. You need to have a training on it.
Yeah.
But anything which is knowledge economy, you don't need. You just need intellectual curiosity. You can do anything as long as you put your time and have experience.
Okay, just moving. Who are your sporting heroes, and why would you pick whoever you're going to mention? Why would you pick them as your sporting heroes?
Look, I'm a 90s kid, so there is no one who, and I'm from India, so there is no one who comes close to Sachin Tendulkar. There is absolutely no comparison. I mean, whether you are as a person or as a work ethic, as a discipline. And I was showing to my son a video of his 2002 or 2003 Australian series where, it was very, very similar to how Virat Kohli got out in 4 test matches. Yeah. Sachin had the same problem in 2002-3, and he used to get out, nicking the ball outside the off stump behind the keeper. And he was extraordinarily accomplished. And before the test match started in Sydney, he came and said, I'm going to not play cover drive at all. I will not play anything in the offside. So I'm getting out playing the stroke on the offside. So I will absolutely not play anything on the offside so that there is no chance that they're going to get me out. So he scored 200 runs plus in the Sydney test match. And in the initial 100 runs was a real mental battle where it was against his grain and against his natural game not to play anything on the offside for a very, very long time. And even after he scored 200, and I'll send you the YouTube link, and like Steve was says like, so like now you have scored 100, you have scored 200, surely you can play on the offside. No, he was not out, 240 odd not out, never played offside, and he was accomplished batsman at that stage. So it comes in terms of the discipline. Sometimes you are the best. You are considered to be the best in cover drive and playing the offside, but you lose your touch. But ability to restrict yourself and play the immense discipline, I mean, there is nobody who comes close to him. And the amount of hours that he put together, and very level-headed. Another story that I always tell to my son is Kamli and Tendulkar. If you look at the early part of their career, both of them were from the same school. By far, you can ask anyone, Kamli was way more talented than Tendulkar. The talent was unmatched. In fact, calmly had scored 2 or 3 double centuries in the first 10 test matches, if I remember correct. He had absolute disrespect for Shane Warne. I remember him smashing 20 odd runs in 1 over with Shane Warne. Extraordinarily talented, same school, same coach. But success can do tricky things to your mind. You know, calmly, completely lost his way. Tendulkar, the combination of talent plus he didn't take talent for granted. He worked really hard. Means he's an absolute role model in all walks of life. I mean, how to behave, how work ethic, etc. So do not rely on your talent alone. You need work ethic, and Tendulkar by far is extraordinary. And for that matter, I have huge respect for any sports people who have endured for a very, very long time. And I wrote about Federer
Federer.
as well.
Yeah.
Federer is amazing. He changed his game completely, and the longevity of his career that he has had, it doesn't come easy. Messi, Ronaldo, all of these people, anyone who's accomplished and who's survived in a sports for a long time, you have to read about their biographies and about their work ethic. Because unlike corporate career, there is no fooling around or waffling around in the field with buzzwords and presentations. You are on the field, you will be exposed. There is nowhere to hide, and sports field mimics life. It's brutal. You can do everything extraordinary in the last 30 seconds, you will lose everything. So huge respect for anybody who has survived in any sport for 20 plus years. They are worth studying, mentally or physically.
Interesting.
Lately, a lot of industry leaders are calling for 70 to 90 hours a week. What is your personal view on that, and what do you think about work-life balance?
I mean, everyone has to define their own work-life balance. That is very, very important. I mean, how someone can quantify how many hours you need to put in. I find it like, are you going to measure the input or the output? So it doesn't make sense in terms of just telling the number of hours you need to work. Then are you going to reward only the input without the output? No client is going to pay, or Apple, you're not going to buy an Apple iPhone just because Apple comes and says that I have put in 100 hours, thousands of hours, why don't you buy my phone? So the measuring the hours in terms of input makes absolutely no sense to me. No face time, no input measurement. Personal work-life balance, nobody can define apart from yourself. Everyone's work-life balance is going to be different, and it's going to be different in the early part of your careers. One thing I'm realizing is, as my son has turned 15, my mom used to say, and I never used to connect with me. She said, like, you left when you were 22, you have not spent time with me. It's already 25 years. Now I'm coming to a realization that there'll be another 3 years that my son will be there, and then he will be gone to the universities and whatnot. So I'm defining on, okay, in 3 years, can I maximize the experiences that he wants to get as a family unit? So if you want to travel to some country, someplace, let's do it. So that means, I won't mind missing important meetings or whatever it is, because in a long arc, I'm not going to get this time back. So, and one thing that I've also realized is I really enjoyed when, he was very young, between 3 to 11. I used to walk him to school every day in the morning. There is no inhibition, there is no self-consciousness. The questions are amazing, and sometimes you get stunned by the questions. So I used to treasure my time walking him to school in the time, and I absolutely loved every minute of it. and in the weekend, we used to take him to sports and etc. So long story short is, depending on where you are in your life, you have to define what is important for you, and you have to make it very non-negotiable with your firm, that this is non-negotiable. If it doesn't work with the firm, you got to change. That's pretty much, I would say. So I enjoy working and talking to kids. They have no inhibition, so I always enjoyed that. So that's not a perfect answer, but absolutely crazy if someone says that the input time has to be 70 to 90 hours. At least in my view, makes no sense. Warren Buffett says, like, your calendar is sign of your wealth. Warren Buffett has, that's your ultimate aim. He basically says his calendar is empty most of the days. He will take one meeting for 1 hour or 2 hours, avoid as many meetings as possible. If someone asks to meet him, he will give them a year later, and then people will say either they won't show up or they won't sign up. So, but he didn't work 70, 90 hours of meeting people. He enjoyed doing what he is doing by reading and investing and whatnot. Not everyone can be Warren Buffett, but to standardize that this is the amount of hours you need to work doesn't make any sense. Even like Monday to Friday, 8 hours is a remnant of the industrial revolution, because you need to be in factory for 8 hours to produce the widgets that you were producing. That is why we work for 8 hours. The schooling is also needs to change dramatically, and I've spoken before. The fact that people are there in school hours, 8 hours in a day, and there is a bell where the school starts, there is a lunchtime bell, there is evening, it's because the English system was developed so that the transition into factory job becomes very, very smooth. And the factories used to work at the ring of a bell, and then you sit in one place, do whatever it is, assembling or manufacturing or whatever it is, then you get half an hour lunchtime or whatever. We have come out of that industrial revolution, that type of working long back. To say 70 hours you need to sit, makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Thank you, Guru. We had a fantastic time and it was quite insightful. And we look forward to having one more episode with you.
I absolutely enjoyed it. This is my first podcast experience, and I never expected such a professional setup with so many cameras and audio quality. So, absolutely thrilled. I was not sure whether I can come over because it was a short trip. So, brilliant, experience. So, I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with both of you. And listen, we should deep dive on certain topics next time around, and I will be better prepared. This was more spontaneous.
We had a very insightful conversation with Guru. For such conversations, please subscribe to our channel.